Hi everyone, Jai Hind and welcome to the platform of StudyIQ IAS in English. My name is Bhavar Singh Surohi. I am ex-India 115th course and qualified civil services in 2012. And in this video, I'll be talking about the Himalayas which are at the flood risk. Now, this is by a study that was conducted by IIT Roorkee using the AI, that is artificial intelligence. And as per this, the report or the study that had been conducted by the IIT Roorkee, it says that 85% of the Uttarakhand districts, they are vulnerable. And 45% of the Himachal districts, they are at the risk. Now, over here, it says that the current flood maps, they fail to capture the multi-hazard nature of the Himalayas. All right. At the same time, when it comes to the AI, so AI had been taken into the usage, and by using the AI, it was used, the ML models had been used to integrate the slope as well as the land use and even the rainfall intensity to map the complete hazard in both the states. As well as when it comes to the climate change, it is shifting the precipitation patterns towards the extreme events that we have seen the last year. In the last year, there was lots of flood in Himachal as well as Uttarakhand, and ultimately this is again that has been portrayed by the report that had been conducted by IIT Roorkee. Now, there is also the merger of two important geographical events that creates this risk or that makes this risk even higher. And that is that the complete Himalayas, it is in the tectonic region, and also there is the climatic context as well. So Himalayas, they are basically the young fold mountains which were created after the collision of the Indian plate with the Eurasian plate. And there is the high relief, the slope gradients, and even the tectonic instability that is there in this region. So ultimately, there are the risk of the GLOF or the glacial lake outburst floods. Like, for example, there were floods in 2021 in Rishiganga, and also the rainfall. There is heavy intensity or high intensity rainfall through the western disturbances, and that increases the risk in both the states. Now, the AI that had been used for the complete calculation of this report is basically, there were the hydrodynamic models which are used normally. Now, these hydrodynamic models, they say basically they fail for the ungazed basins where historical data is less or sparse and the terrain is also very complex. So here we had taken, or the IIT Roorkee, it had taken the help or the advantage of the machine learning, and through this, there were the random forest and the support vector machine tests that were conducted, and they had been used for the non-linear environmental relationships. There was also the map, ultimately the advantage was that it could map the risk at the village level rather than just at the district as well, and that was also one of the feature of the AI model that was taken into the consideration. And also the remote sensing data had been used for the predictive modeling, and thereby it is a real-time integration when it comes to the AI modeling of the complete risk that or the report that had been generated. Now, there had been, when it comes to the AI, so ultimately the deployment of the deep learning AI model was used, and this model is CNN-UNet, and it have achieved the ultra-fine mapping up to 90 meters. All right, at the same time, when it comes to the matrix, the different matrix were analyzed. All right, it was not just one, but 14 of the matrix were analyzed where there were different factors, like, for example, the terrain was taken into the consideration, the vegetation cover, as well as the topographic wetness index and the elevation criteria as well. And ultimately, through this model, there was 97.12 accuracy that was achieved for the complete risk analysis. So this is the complete finding when it comes to Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh. So flood-prone districts are in Uttarakhand, there are 85%, and in Himachal, they are 45%. All right, the primary hazards which are there in Uttarakhand is extreme floods as well as landslides, and that is because of, or the key risk driver is the low vegetation cover in Uttarakhand. And when it comes to the Himachal Pradesh, there the primary risk are flood, along with flood, landslides and avalanches, and the primary or the key risk factor that is there in Himachal is the high water accumulation that is in Himachal. Now, what are the root causes for these risks which are there in Uttarakhand and in Himachal that leads to the flood risk? The first one is the natural factors. All right, there are cloudbursts, there are steep slopes, and even high sediment load. So ultimately what happens is that because of this, whenever there is severe rainfall, there are the floods which occurs in both the states or the Himachal states which are there. Also, this is very close to the MCT or the main central thrust, which is the fault line that lies between that lies in the Himalayas, and that leads to, or it can trigger the earthquake as well, and that can lead to the GLOF or the glacial lake outburst floods as well. There is also infrastructure push. If you'll see, there is all-weather Chardham road that is being constructed, it is being widening, and unregulated hydropower projects are there which are without any proper environmental impact assessment reports or their integrity. And ultimately, because of the infrastructure push, because of the development, these regions which are already fragile ecosystem, now they are facing the risk of the floods, or the flood could be there in these states. There is also tourism load. When it comes to the surge, so there had been a surge in the spiritual as well as adventure tourism in both these states, whether it is Uttarakhand or whether it is the Himachal Pradesh. In Uttarakhand, we have seen surge in the spiritual, and in Himachal Pradesh, there is surge in the adventure tourism that has exceeded the ecological carrying capacity of both the states. And again, these are the primary or the root cause of the risk that these states they have. Now, this is just beyond the floods. All right, when the flood is there, so it does not impact the water line, but it also impacts the other things as well. Like, for example, the environment. There is loss of biodiversity, the topsoil is eroded, and also the permanent landscape is scarred for the coming generations. There is also socio-economic impact because it leads to destruction of the critical links which are there. That is roads as well as bridges, and there is rural migration as well that leads to creation of the ghost villages, because people, they migrate and they leave the complete village completely. There is also psychological implication because the long-term trauma is there for the mountain communities, and there is loss of the indigenous heritage. Again, these are the things that are, or they are impacted because of the floods in these states. Now, when it comes to the government response or the institutional framework that we have, so there are the NDMA guidelines which had been released, and they are because of, or they are the specialized protocols which are there in the event of the GLOFs, that is glacial lake outburst floods, and even for the landslides as well. We have the NDRF and the SDMA, that is the National Disaster Response Force, and also the State Disaster Management Authority, or the force that is there. Now, these are the first responders with the high altitude specialized equipment, and in the event of the floods, or even in the event of the landslides or any of the natural disaster, they are the first responders which respond in the event of any calamity. There is also early warning systems as well. The CWC, that is Central Water Commission, and the IMD, that is the Indian Meteorological Department. They are integrating for the last mile connectivity, and also they are moving towards the early warning systems, which will, there will be the warnings that could be issued in the event of the extreme or the disaster that could struck. There is also Sendai framework, and this Sendai framework, there is the, when it comes to the early warning, so there is the target G that is there in Sendai framework for the disaster reduction or the disaster risk reduction that had been signed, and India is also a signatory to the Sendai framework. So there is target G, that is for the multi-hazard early warning systems, and again this connects the early warning system, it connects to the Sendai framework as well. Now, when it comes to the Himalayas are basically, or they are not merely this resource for exploitation, but they are also fragile sentinel whose health dictates the survival of the complete Indo-Gangetic plains. That is what we have to understand as far as the ethics of the Himalayan governance is concerned. Now, there are certain critical challenges that we have when it comes to the mitigation. The first one is that there is lack of cross-border data sharing between China, India, and Nepal on the glacial lakes. Also, another challenge is that the 15th Finance Commission, it had recommended for the mitigation fund, but these mitigation fund have yet not reached the grassroots as well. The third of the challenge is the community gaps, that is the top-down approach ignores the traditional mountain knowledge, and ultimately the fourth challenge that we have in front of us for the mitigation is the terrain complexity. So ultimately, because this is a tough terrain and these are the Himalayas that we are talking about, which have steep slopes, this difficulty or this terrain, the terrain difficulty is very important because that leads to non-installing of the sensors in the high altitude zones, and these are the some of the challenges that we have right now in front of us. Now, what are the policy recommendations or what is the way forward? In short term, we can use the AI-based real-time flood mapping and color-coded warning systems for the pilgrims which are going for the the pilgrimage in these regions. Also, in the medium term, we can revise the building bylaws and declare that no construction zones should be there near the riverbeds. And also in the long term, we should focus on the transitioning towards the green tourism and regional cooperation for the Himalayan conservation as well. So that would be all. But at the same time, if you have any question, you can leave your question or your suggestion in the comment box. And also for a resilient Himalayas, the science, it must lead. But at the same time, science is leading. The policy, it must follow the lead of the science. So that would be all. But at the same time, if you are looking for a lucrative optional for your 2027 or 2028, you can enroll into my upcoming public administration batch. The batch will be starting from 15th of May. And ultimately, you can use the code that is BRS Live for the maximum discount. Even if you are looking forward for a GS Foundation course where the complete GS would be covered, so we have the GS Foundation, that is Resolution P2I batch for 2027 and for 2028 as well. You can enroll into these batches. Again, you can use the code that is BRS Live for the maximum discount. So that would be all in this video. I hope that ultimately this covers the complete aspect of the flood risk that is there in the Uttarakhand and even Himalayas as per the latest report that was presented, and it was prepared by IIT Roorkee. So that would be all. But at the same time, do not forget to like, share as well as subscribe to our channel so that you do not miss any of the updates. I will see you in the next. But till then, take care of yourself. Bye-bye and Jai Hind.